We got actually 40 responses, and some of them really detailed. So I'm positively surprised, and I want to thank the ones who responded to this survey because we already have really good input for this discussion. As I mentioned, now we will collect with your input from today this in a toolkit that my colleague will later present how it will be structured, and that will be the basis of the guidance that we plan to provide to our member countries. With no further ado, I would like now to introduce my colleague, Gayatri Prakash, who is the analyst that is leading this work. So, Gayatri, please.
Thank you, Francisco. I think to begin with, I would like to give an overview of IRENA's work on end-use sectors, and more specifically on hard-to-abate sectors, which is basically the focus of today's workshop. So indeed, IRENA has produced several reports on decarbonizing the end-use sectors, which you have already seen in the last few days in several sessions. In collaboration with the Indian G20 presidency, IRENA released a report in July of this year, which looks at the measures to improve the circularity of the iron and steel sector. Furthermore, we also published the Breakthrough Agenda report in partnership with the IEA and the UN High-Level Climate Champions, which looks at the progress of the steel sector, more in the angle of standards, certifications, demand creations, and so on. Apart from this, we do have several deep dive reports on e-fuels, such as the renewable ammonia and methanol. And we also have a focus on the biojet fuels, which are all available on our website. Apart from these knowledge products, we also focus quite a lot on collaborations and enhancing the dialogue between different stakeholders. On this aspect, IRENA's Alliance for Industrial Decarbonization has been very active. So we have around 55 members, including companies from energy, mining, steel, and chemical sector. The primary objective of this alliance is, of course, to enhance the dialogue, raise aspirations, and coordinate the actions among its members to decarbonize the industrial value chains. So we know the importance of hard-to-abate sectors, as Francisco already highlighted. In particular, the 4 industrial sectors and the 3 transportation modes make up to over 1/3 of the energy and process emissions and close to 43% of the overall energy use by 2050, if major policy implications are not happening now. Progress in these sectors have been limited till date. We do see some efficiency improvements, and we see that annual emissions in industry from 2017 towards 2050, as per the plans, reaches close to 11 gigatons in 2050. As far as the deployment of renewables are not so happening in these sectors, options are there, evolving, but indeed the cost seems to be the prime barrier in most of these sectors. However, 2 things have changed in recent years that really gives us some optimistic views. Strong and widening societal recognition and increasing political views on the need for these sectors to cut down the emissions and apparently reach zero towards mid-century. The rapid decline in cost of the renewables over the past decade and the future potential of cost reductions and scaling of low-carbon technologies across all these sectors gives us more optimistic views towards the next 3 decades. So indeed, we had several discussions in the last few days. So we had deep dive sessions on steel, chemicals, on the industrial side. We tried to summarize the key takeaways from these sessions, and we see that technology is really not a big challenge. Indeed, in terms of the barriers, we see that in terms of steel, a lack of clear definition of low carbon steel is the prime challenge that's existing. And that also is one of the barriers that needs to be really mitigated with wide range of policy measures and financial incentives. With respect to the chemical sector, we again see that the big challenge is the inconsistent regulatory framework. And here we see the need for a variety of solutions that needs to be deployed in the sector. Circularity plays a key role. With respect to the transportation modes, so on day one, we had a deep dive session on the road transport, and we see the strong importance of smart charging and smart electrification strategies. IRENA has indeed launched a flagship report looking at the smart electrification of end-use application. And here we give like three focus on power to heat, power to mobility, and power to hydrogen modules. So now during the Innovation Week, an interactive toolkit has been launched, and indeed I would encourage you to have a look at the website. With respect to shipping and aviation, we had a very nice panel discussing on the key role of different stakeholders and the importance of using e-fuels and focusing more on the policy support that are needed to enhance the innovation activities. Sorry, okay. So of course, from IRENA, we always see that innovation needs to be systemic. And it needs to be extended far beyond technologies, but rather looking into other dimensions as well. Here we focus more on the market design and regulations, more on the power sector side, system planning and operations, and also on the private sector side, the innovations that's happening in the business models. Therefore, these innovations need to be systemic, and it plays a key role in actually fostering the renewable-based solutions in all the end-use sectors. Oops. I'm sorry, I think it's a bit sensitive. So we would like to use this, apply the systemic innovation concept more on the project that Francisco already mentioned, that IRENA is working in collaboration with the European Commission, innovations to foster the renewable energy transitions in end-use sectors. So here the focus is on the 6 hard-to-abate sectors. And here we would like to look into different dimensions. So more on the policies, the vision of the government, and also looking beyond the policies on the enabling technologies and associated infrastructure that's needed to deploy the low carbon technologies, the innovations that's happening in the market side, finance, and the business models. And last but not the least, the most important part, the need for skills and capacities. So the overall objective of this workshop is to discuss the enabling conditions to decarbonize all these 6 hard-to-abate sectors, looking at different angles as we see in these 4 pillars. So now I would like to start the discussion, focusing more on these 4 pillars. And here I would like to first start with a few housekeeping points just to keep up the flow well. So every discussion will be around the 4 pillars that I just presented. At the beginning of the discussion, we will have a minute or so to present the results from the expert survey that has been circulated well in advance to this workshop. And then we will invite few experts to intervene on those pillars, followed by we will open up the floor to invite you to provide few interventions around these key questions that we would put forth. And I do understand that 1 hour is going to be very limited. So we would highly encourage, if you have any feedback or any inputs that you would like to contribute, please send to this email that I have indicated in this slide. So when you have any questions or like any interventions, do please raise your hand and we will just pick the people accordingly based on the timing. So the first part of the discussion, indeed, that we see that having a clear, strong vision is the topmost priority to decarbonize these sectors. And there are a wide range of policy support and regulatory measures that needs to be in place. And here, the role of government is very crucial. So the pillar here that focuses on the industry's requirement from governments in terms of the key strategies and targets, and also supporting the policies and other regulatory measures to enable the transformation of all these sectors. On this regard, we did send two key questions, which are focusing on two angles. So the first part being the key barriers that actually hinder the deployment of green solutions in these sectors. And here we kind of received a really good feedback, and they are ranked in the order of importance. They are not specific to any sector. So here it's going to be more aligned to all the hard to abate sectors. So we see that lack of clear sector-specific targets is considered to be the topmost barrier, followed by the gaps on certifications and standards and need to harmonize them internationally. We also see that the insufficient carbon pricing and other mechanisms plays a key role. And finally, also recognizing that permitting and approval process are important. And on the other angle, of course, on the tools and the enabling measures that we can actually deploy to accelerate the transition. Most of the survey responses were focusing on having tax incentives for companies to invest more on sustainable technologies, and also to think more about having stricter environmental regulations and penalties in terms of violations. And the role of subsidies and having a mandatory carbon pricing mechanisms and other measures plays a role. So here I would like to take up and invite Tudor Floria from the Ministry of Energy Transitions of France to make his interventions. Please.
Cool. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting here. Good afternoon to everybody. It's afternoon. Just a few thoughts on this part. Again, I think the policy is often seen by the stakeholders and some kind of expectation from the government, but actually it's a co-work. The stakeholders also have responsibilities. The governments cannot hold all the responsibility, but it can set up, let's say, a strategy, a policy, and with using the right tools, which I see here on the slide. I just want to insist of the last item, which is the permitting. Safety is a red line for obvious reasons. So if there is any kind of slowness and stuff like this, I recommend you to read the report of European Clean Hydrogen Alliance on this particular topic. And then how can I put this? Why should we have a specific targets for the sectors? All the sector must decarbonize. We cannot divide to say you first, you second. Everybody must decarbonize at the same time. And then there are the tools, and I think one thing that is missing also is how do we hit also the financial sectors. I didn't see any mention of the taxonomy regulation, for example, to shift the finance, because there are a lot of financing in the energy sector across the world, but not exactly in, let's say, decarbonized energy or industry. So this, I think it's a little bit of a miss here. And I think my 3 minutes are up, so I pass the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite now Ralph from DLR. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'm talking a little bit about the aviation industry, because the aviation industry is somewhat special. Aviation industry is already strongly regulated. We are not missing any regulation at all. So, and what you need to know as well, aviation is protected, governmental protected. It's a holy cow, Air France for France, or Lufthansa for Germany. So that's why they are protected. And if you know that these are such a protected area, it is the easiest and the fastest to decarbonize, even if there's a lot of objections. But number one, why should we start with that? It's the transport of the rich. If you look at the social consequences that has, right? Aviation can be the rich. How should we do that? There's a simple measure, the blending rate. And what is the objections? politicians are not really willing to be ambitious enough to set the blending rates high enough. So if you are a young guy and want to decarbonize or reduce the CO2 emission of the aviation, there's only one way to do that: block the airport. Or you vote for the right politicians that refuel aviation what it is. The blending rates are doubled, are tripled, or whatever, because it's all too little, too late. And with that, I need to say sorry, I need to leave because I need to get my train. But I want to leave that as your discussion to figure out how the aviation then can work together with the other sectors to get a share of the burden of that. So that's what I want to say. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ralph. And we recognize that your train is dead and never trust the German train, sorry. So please, thank you so much for your intervention. I would like to invite now Alexandra from the E3G to make her remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me, and I'll try to be very brief. So yeah, my think tank is called E3G, and I'm in the industry decarbonization team, by which industry we mainly mean basic materials. And we're talking about both barriers and policy enablers here. So I'll try to divide these 3 minutes into highlighting the particular characteristics of basic materials industries and why it's challenging to decarbonize them, and then highlight the enablers. So I think the main characteristics are low availability of low carbon technology alternatives. But this is changing now, obviously, with clean tech innovation and the investment boom. So we're kind of seeing also a shift from competitiveness concerns resting upon heavy carbon leakage concerns towards other types of competitiveness concerns, such as renewables pool. So really, countries lagging behind on decarbonization are becoming less competitive. And this sort of links up to the second particular characteristic, is the high trade exposure of those sectors, which also means operating on lower profit margins. And lastly, very long-lived assets, which means potential dangerous lock-ins in infrastructure, and also potential pushback against investments at unusual times outside of normal investment cycles. So I think we all agree that to create the enabling environment for the necessary shift, we need both sticks and carrots. And I tried to put these policy enablers into bigger boxes rather than just like very specific things like speeding up permitting. So the first category is definitely public support for technology innovation still, but I think we've talked about this enough. And second category comprises a bunch of policy tools that are aimed at bridging the green premium for those technologies to be able to commercialize them. So we've got obviously carbon pricing, but then we also need direct support for commercial scale climate neutral production sites. And that means both CapEx and OpEx. And obviously a policy expert favorite here would be carbon contracts for difference, for instance, but it can mean any sort of instrument like tax incentives that you mentioned. And a really important and often underutilized tool as well are demand pool instruments, because we want to create lead markets. And for instance, we can do that through public procurement to then crowd in private investment. And there are two further very key enabling boxes of policy tools. And as you can imagine, the next one will be enabling infrastructure. So not only clean power and hydrogen, but also CCS. And that means planning and provision of that. And lastly, but not least importantly, circularity standards. So eco-design standards for final products, end-of-life obligation and such. And my very last point, I'll really try to be brief here because I think maybe this is not going to be raised by other speakers here. is the potential negative side effects of those policies. So we can think of the domestic negative side effects and international negative side effects. And domestically, we can, for instance, think of distributional effects of carbon pricing. And internationally, we can think, for instance, of the resource curse that was mentioned in a lot of panels this week. And for those who maybe don't understand what resource curse means, in the case of industrial transformation, this could mean that resource-rich regions would essentially export the majority of their resources for the benefit of countries with way higher, usually industrial demand located elsewhere. And this leads to little to no value add left in the resource-rich region, for instance, through stacking on further steps in the value chain to provide that economic benefit locally. So really, what I'm trying to say here is that we need partnerships that are mutually benefits between those resource-rich and industry-rich countries, and local decarbonization and local benefits need to be prioritized. So I think I'll leave it here, and I'll also just try to echo the optimism from the first speech, that I think we are now moving away from the period about 5 years ago where we didn't really have the technologies. We actually are seeing now we have the technologies. So I would say that heavy industry is maybe easier to abate, not necessarily hard to abate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's really, really nice to hear all your interventions and the key points I think we are capturing from our end. And you touched upon several pillars and the international collaboration, which we will discuss in soon. I would like to open the floor now to have some interventions more along the side. We did hear a lot of the gaps, but if there are any other gaps that exist on policies and regulatory side that require the immediate attention of governments, and what could be the enabling regulatory conditions or strategies to support your sectorial transformation? Please, at the beginning, if you can mention your name, organization, and if your response is specific to any sector. Sorry, I have to choose him with the access to the mic. If time permits, I'll get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was supposed to be on front, but I missed the cue on that. So my area or my field of expertise is transport. So I come from Colombia. So one of the key challenges that we face in Colombia is that most of the freight transport is for road transport. So we either have like the possibility of moving to railroads, or perhaps to just try to use the infrastructure that we have to kind of like make it more climate friendly. So some of the gaps that we see there are basically related to having few options, technology options for actually deploying like a cleaner, like a zero emission transport in Colombia. So here hydrogen plays a great part, but there is also kind of like some dilemma, because when we were assessing the potential for hydrogen deployment in the transport sector, we realized that one of the main early takers or like producers of hydrogen, or like users of hydrogen, sorry, would be for refining. So it would be kind of like a locking in into fossil fuels for the transport sector. And we are also depending on the technologies that may be developed for this particular sector. So one of the things that we were recommending to our government is basically ramping up the standards, emission standards for internal combustion engine. So somehow it could be competitive with newer technologies that are being brought, or that could be brought to our country. But it isn't only that, because we also feel like the fossil fuels for road transport are heavily subsidized still. So we still have to get to a point where it is no longer subsidized, but then apply a higher tax, carbon tax to those fuels. So we feel like there is a gap in there, like where we can kind of like contribute if we repurpose those carbon taxes into actually funding the acquisition of new fleets of zero emission vehicles. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. In the limit of time, I need to shift to the next pillar, but if time permits, we can have a discussion later. So the next pillar is focusing on the enabling technologies and infrastructure. So here the focus is more around the remaining gaps in technological deployment, infrastructure, and their cost, along with exploring the potential role of government or any other stakeholders in addressing these challenges. So with respect to the survey, we did have the same format as in the key challenges that are actually hindering the deployment of low carbon technologies. And on these challenges, we see that cost plays a key role for these technologies at the moment. And we also see the insufficient availability or availability of renewable generation capacity and associated infrastructure takes the second spot. And we see, of course, I mean, we did hear from the last few days that technology is there somehow. We just need a lot of supportive measures. So here, the low levels of maturity for technology is more about supporting on the R&D. And we see that, of course, the existing infrastructure requires retrofitting and adaptation complexities and so on. With respect to how governments can cooperate with the private sector to accelerate the adoption of clean technologies, we see that joint ventures to co-finance the infrastructure projects takes the top spot, and followed by encouraging joint technological pilot programs and developing a consortia between the public and private sector for technological research and development. And we also see carbon pricing mechanism also plays a key role, and we also see that collaboration on the skills and technological initiatives to other parts of the region also is important. Here, I would like to take a moment. I think, Cesar, I had you here interviewing, so maybe I'll just move on to the next person, or I would give the floor to the last. You had, maybe you can intervene. Thank you.
I just had one question to the Honorable France Minister. How are you working on aligning the policies of the France to the EU level? Because I see that the France policies, especially the
like carbon reduction policies are not aligned at the EU level. Like you have 40% carbon reduction and EU has a 55% carbon reduction target. So how the France government is aligning the policies at the EU level?
I'm not sure if I understood correctly the question, but every European text, whether it's a directive must be transposed into the national law, and the regulation applies as such. So I don't understand what makes you think that we have different targets.
So actually, if I look at the France, when I look at the France document, they say we have 40% of.
We have 40% target reduction for the carbon emission, but as per the Fit 55 package, it says 55% like carbon reduction target. So it's not aligning. So how are you addressing this problem, or making sure to ensure that your France policies is aligned to the EU level?
Yeah, I don't know where you got that document, but it's obvious it's not an official one. The Fit for 55 package applies as it applies to all the member states. That's the rule. There is no, see, if you read somewhere this part, I'm sorry, you have to check your source again.
Thank you very much. I'd like to open the floor now for hearing what other challenges do exist in advancing the clean technologies and infrastructure adoption, and how innovation can foster the deployment rates. Please.
Thank you very much for the floor. I'm Ambrosio Anolo. I'm the Vice Chair of the Technology Executive Committee of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It's more to add to the question than to answer, because this seems very interesting, but in the context that we operate on the TC, it would be very nice to hear if this these results doesn't matter on geography, or if actually if you're on a developing country, on a particular region, this actually changes. That will be very interesting for inform the unit of CCC work. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Thank you. My name is Alex Campbell. I'm from the Long Duration Energy Storage Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today. Just a couple of quick points. I fully appreciate the survey and the hierarchy of responses, but of course, we need to think about these things holistically, and we'd recommend a suite of policy options to make sure we encourage innovation and so on. The LDES Council is publishing a report actually next week on industrial decarbonisation, including on the role of long duration energy storage in steel and cement sectors. We still see it some years away before we can fully commercialise, perhaps by the early 2030s, in particular around high temperature waste heat recovery and heat use more generally and storage more generally. But that's why it's really important to see that government intervention, partnership with industry, providing those enabling investments and the whole suite of policy interventions that you talked about previously. So we strongly support all of those. Thank you. And I'll share a copy of the report once it's published.
Thank you very much. Can we move? I think we can move to the next segment. Important one, markets, business, and finance. So here the focus is more on the strategies for different stakeholders to establish a market for green commodities, mainly to address the challenges companies are facing in scaling up the breakthrough technologies, particularly in financing first-of-kind facilities and projects, exploring potential solutions for green commodity producers to maintain the competitiveness in the global market. So in this regard, we really had a very good response from the survey, but we tried to simplify it for the sake of time. So here, in terms of the possible measures that can be deployed to address this higher cost of low carbon alternatives and how to create a market for the green products, we see that regulatory mandates plays a key role, followed by subsidies for investments, especially for the first of its kind projects. Public procurement to pull the demand for green commodities is another important factor. We'd like to hear more on this aspect. Sectorial agreements on carbon footprint thresholds for low carbon products, and also establishing incentives for consumers to pay the green premiums. I think on this point, I have several names here. So first, I would like to give the floor to Zoran Stanic from the European Investment Bank.
Thank you very much, and thanks for inviting me. So my name is Zoran Stanic. I'm head of unit for the Innovation Fund in EIB, and we are providing actually advisory services to European Commission and private sector to support this innovative technologies, low carbon innovative technologies that apply for the Innovation Fund grants through various 2 calls per year, one for the large scale, one for the small scale. And maybe I will just use this opportunity to say a few words about EIB for colleagues who may not be so familiar. We are EU bank. Our owners are member states of EU. We provide very big finance. We are biggest lender in the world, 60 billion per year. And 90% of that is in European Union, 10% is outside EU. We are closely following EU policies, which one of them is, of course, climate and energy security and innovation. So these are our top priorities. We have our climate roadmap, which actually provides us with the objectives to be Paris aligned. So our projects must be really Paris aligned. For example, we stopped financing fossil fuels already 3 years ago. We don't do it anymore. I mean, with coal, we stopped even earlier, but with the gas, we stopped even 3 years ago. And in terms of, let's say, supporting the projects, since we don't have many staff, let's say that's one maybe of the things that is interesting here. If the project is smaller than 25 million, we work through local banks. If the project is above 25 million, we can work directly with the project promoters. Now, in terms of those, let's say, aspects that were highlighted in the survey, I can say that we have very good cooperation with the European Commission through various schemes where we can support this first-of-a-kind innovative technologies. If you remember, for example, from this panel that we had, I think it was on the first day on the steel sector, we actually financed almost all of those projects there. I mean, we are part of this H2 Green Steel, and also we have 2 projects with ArcelorMittal, very innovative. How we manage to do it? I mean, we are working with the Commission to have specific guarantee schemes for this first-of-a-kind projects. Of course, this doesn't mean that we don't do our due diligence. So let's say the due diligence is still critical. And what I can say is also that it's very important to have very good sponsor team. They must be really very capable, as the project must be technically sound. We check very carefully the market. The revenues must be ensured, also environmental and social aspects. So these are the key things, because in the end, the project, whether innovative or not, must be in a way commercially viable. If it cannot, of course, many of these technologies have very high risks, so they cannot demonstrate economic viability. So we also offer advisory services. So let's say to improve the project, we offer, if the project is in a very early stage, we can also do so-called venture capital debt, which is a kind of mezzanine finance. And we also provide blending with the grants. So let's say the project can be also partially financed through the grants and through the loans. So in a way, we follow full cycle of the project. Wherever the project it is, we can enter into it. But I would say the main thing is really the quality of the project. So I would say this is where we start from. So really, the project must be very well prepared, have good sponsors with a good credit rating, but also with the good technical capabilities. And then from there, I think we can go on. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'd like to invite Joanna from the OECD.
Well, let me first thank our partner, Irina, for the invitation and for such an enriching discussions we've had during the last 3 days. My name is Joanna Jami. I work at the OECD as a data analyst on green hydrogen and industry decarbonization in developing countries. Now, I will try to summarize my takeaways on markets, enabling conditions, and financing instruments in 3 minutes. As we have heard many times this week, innovation is key. We need to understand what kind of enabling solutions and financing instruments we need to decarbonize the industry sectors, well, in particular hard-to-abate ones, such as iron and steel, chemicals, textiles, cement, and their value chains, of course. This is especially true in emerging economies and emerging markets and developing economies, where industrial activities are growing in an unprecedented pace and are the engine of socioeconomic development. Now, the OECD published in 2022 a framework for industries, net zero transition. This framework proposes a step-by-step approach at country level that first tries to strengthen the enabling conditions that create a favorable environment for investments in decarbonization projects, and also identifies financing instruments that can improve the bankability of these projects. And right now, this framework is being implemented in Egypt, Indonesia, South Africa, and Thailand. In addition, this year we have analyzed 15 different case studies showcasing financing instruments deployed to support industry decarbonization projects. Now, these case studies have shown several lessons about key success factors. So first, on enabling conditions, access to infrastructure, low-cost renewable electricity, and critical material supply are often as prerequisites for financing projects. Also, institutional readiness and regulatory support, including mandates and quotas, have been identified as crucial. This could be supported by technical assistance, but also capacity building, where international organizations such as the OECD and ARENA play a key role. Second, on financing solutions, there is a need for large amounts of capital to decarbonize hard-to-abate sectors. The scarce public finance requires further mobilization of private capital. Thus, innovative instruments such as the risking mechanisms and grants through blended finance are critical for decarbonization projects. Now, we also identified that the significant share of the capital flows go to medium and small-sized enterprises, given their huge contribution to employment and GDP and their lack of access to finance. Now, finally, further analysis on socioeconomic impacts of the decarbonization is needed to ensure just a transition. Now, before ending, I would like to say that these findings will be addressed in a report that will release by the end of the year on financing solutions and enabling conditions to foster industry decarbonization in emerging markets, and which has notably been benefited from IRENA's inputs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I think it would be nice to read the report later. I would like to pass the floor now to Lars from Neste.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really hard to understand. I try to speak slowly. That's not because I'm slow in my brain, or not only, but just I think you can better understand. Maybe brief introduction. Neste is a Finnish company, and we are in the business of carbon management, or you could say we work on defossilization. Because what we do is we don't decarbonize, because we are taking carbon sources from waste and residue biomass, for example, or circular biomass, and convert it into fuels for aviation, for road transportation, and also for marine, as well as for chemistry. We had the discussion on Tuesday where we talked about that chemistry cannot be decarbonized really because you have the material itself. That's important. And all too often that is not really understood and taken into account. But now on the topic maybe. So with regards to also comparison between fuels and chemistry as an example. So we heard this also in the first statement, I think, one of the first statements. Aviation is heavily regulated, and there's also regulation coming up which will lead to decarbonization. For road transportation, that is true, at least in some areas of the world. So for Europe, it is red, and for California, there's regulations in place. Elsewhere, not so much. And we do see that whenever such a regulation is in place, the market really is growing. And that is for the fact, obviously, that there is an incentive, and that makes it then easier to absorb and then to really also change into these solutions, which are there. So the innovation is key, we always say that. On the other side, yeah, the solutions are already also there. That's also a fact. So we need additional innovation, but a lot of that can be done today. If you allow me, I would like to draw a special view onto the chemistry, because there not such as regulation are in place. So there are some things which are coming up in the European Union specifically, but principally there's no regulation which is really supporting the move towards a lower CO2 intensity. But I would also like to maybe one point. I mean, as much as we do need support from regulators, I will come to that. There's also a market now already. There is really, believe it or not, a voluntary market for chemicals which are based on renewable carbon. And we see that, and that's what we work. This is a part of the business model. We work together a lot with brand owners. So if you have surveys, then principally the result is always that consumers say, we want to do something about the climate change also in our chemical product. However, we believe that the brands should take care. That's why we buy you. So that's why then all the big brands or brand houses like Unilever, Procter & Gamble, you name them, they all do have an agenda which one or the other way talks about fossil free by 2030 or different numbers. So there's an obligation because there's a public pressure onto these organizations to become fossil free. And so what we internally always think about, we have two customers. We have customers for the molecules we sell, but we have a customer for the sustainability we sell. And it turns out that you need to take both into account, and that there is a growing number of consumers which really put a lot of pressure onto the brand owners. Some of them also are ready to pay more. Most of them would rather say it's your job to do that. So in that sense, there is a market. In that sense, there's demand. There's business models which can also help that. We have been discussing also how can you decouple consumption from resource intensity, because all the business models we know currently are set on to, I need to produce more, and producing more means more resource intensity. But there's of course other intelligent business models which don't link growth in economy to resource intensity. So this is also another aspect of markets business models. And talking about finance, our strong belief is, let's say something to be discussed, that the actual change will come from governments and maybe from the financial sector. So EIB plays a big role. I think we also co-invested into ECBF, which is a European Circular Bioeconomy Fund, to kind of help startups over the bridge of technology readiness level. That's key, but there's also a key that these the financial sector holds the industry to be true, in the sense of if there's no sustainability agenda, it will not be financed. And I think what we at least found encouraging was companies like BlackRock, which said we will not invest into any company which doesn't have that. And that will also give the pressure for the change. And this is where we see that the finance must help. But finally, of course, since you were asking for it, what would we wish from governments to support? It's very clear. Let's get away from the thinking that we talk only about decarbonization, but talk about renewable carbon instead, or defossilized solutions. And then it's relatively simple: incentivization of non-fossil carbon, but within that, being technology open, because none of us really knows how things will develop. And there's biomass, there's recycling, there is power to X and all that. So we would wish that a non-fossil carbon is incentivized, or the other way around, fossil carbon gets its fair share of the total burden. And then I think the industries are able to do the rest in terms of innovation and so on. That would be my statement.
Thank you very much, Lars. I'd like to open the floor now to the wider audience. So here we would like to hear some insights on basically assessing sufficient volumes of low-cost renewables is one of the biggest challenge for electro-intensive industries. These industries, however, can provide flexibility services to the power system. How can different business models be leveraged to provide such services? Yes, please.
Apologize, I came a little late, but I was thinking, I guess it's a category number 2, but like in the US, my utility, I don't know if it can apply here, but they provided a discounted LED bulbs. So by default, it's so almost free bulbs. So why not just start using LED bulbs? And because what my experience is that once you start giving, I can only give you a US example. Now they're giving discount on 30% discount for residential solar. But the contractor has started increasing the price, and then so that they can, the US government is willing to give me 10,000, so they're for 30%. So they have increased the price to $6 a watt, which for 5,000 5 kilowatt system. So they were asking me 30,000, which is a $6 a watt. So that I can get the money from
US government and give it to them basically. So that basically is somehow distorting. While on the flip side, if something similar, simple, I get a thing about the bulbs. It's cheaper than buying the bulb, any type of bulb from the market. Why not just take that and install, and your demand has gone so low, something like that. I don't know.
Thank you very much. Is there any other intervention? Please.
Yeah, my name is Florian Ausfeld. I'm working for Decima here in Germany, and my expertise is the chemical sector. On the question of flexibility, we had looked into it, and the main problem there is that from the point of view of any of the energy-intensive industries, the energy-intensive step is the first one, be it in the chemical sector, be it chlorine alkaline, or in the steel sector, be it an electric arc furnace. So if you provide flexibility, you would have some leverage on that first step. But since usually that step is connected to the further manufacturing, what you really have to take into account is the loss of added value over the whole chain, and not only the price of electricity versus the first step. And that makes flexibility by industry quite expensive. It doesn't make it impossible. And we have seen it with the aluminium industry that they make use of it, but aluminium is easy because you can store it. And that is not true for a lot of the other products we have. So I would be a bit cautious, because if anyone around here would like to sit in a tram that suddenly stops and says, sorry, we have to wait until we have the sun again shining on our solar panels, and you are the one providing flexibility right now, congratulations. It's a question of what do you gain from that, which is, for example, stabilization of the electric grid, and what is the cost for that, which might be loss of added value in your manufacturing line. And so I would like to see a more balanced discussion on the question of at what point in the overall value chain do you want to be continuous, and up to what point do you want to be flexible, and who is responsible for providing that continuous support? Might be industry, might be the power sector, but I don't think it's a good idea to just get the flexibility shifted forward along the whole value chain. That would be a disaster.
Thank you very much. Tudor, yours.
Just want to second exactly what you say, and to link it rather with the security of supply. Actually, intensive energy consumers, they need energy 24/7. You cannot stop a refinery or any kind of other chemistry, or even a cement kiln. You cannot stop it for 2 hours. It must run smoothly. And another question is related to all of this: security of supply, the flexibility, is the will to develop the power grid. If people don't want to see power lines, means that they don't want electricity. This is one. And lastly, in order to address fully your question, is also the diversity of low carbon sources of energy. 100% of whatever would that be, renewable or nuclear, it doesn't matter. 100%, if you put all of your eggs in the same basket, you won't have any kind of flexibility.
Thank you very much. In the limit of time, I will have to move to the next pillar. So here we will delve into the challenges and opportunities associated with developing the skills, expertise, and capacities needed to facilitate the decarbonization, and identify the roles of industry and governments in the overall capacity development. So here we gave few examples as in like what could be the major challenges in building the necessary skills in these sectors as we shift towards low carbon economy. So we see that comprehensive and accessible climate change programs plays a key role. And resource-intensive technical expertise gaps do exist in these sectors. Inequalities in knowledge, and especially in the developing countryside, lack of strong communication models, and also misinformation among different stakeholders. So here, I would like to invite Piotr from the New European Energy. Not sure if he's here. Okay. Well, sorry. Yeah, maybe a bit open discussion. What essential skills are required as we shift towards low carbon economy, especially from these industry or transportation mode? Is there really a shortage of skills, or can we rely on the existing legacy skills? Thank you. Yes, please.
No icebreakers. I wanted to ask the question differently. Why young people don't go towards, let's say, this direction? What is missing there? And for me, it's also a question of how high the rank is set by the education system. If you say everybody must have a degree, so I don't look if they are doing their homework right or not. This would be one of the questions. And then the perspectives. We all were young. What did we want? We want to have our house, to pay a car. This also must be addressed. It's not just setting a new type of training if the fundamental things are not changing. Thank you.
Thank you. Lars, please.
Yeah, I could also try to add something. I think what we see, and I don't know if that is true for discussion, is that more than anywhere else in the field of decarbonization, you need to think across borders. So you have circularity models all too often, and you have exactly the solution all too often lies in kind of having a holistic view onto a system. And that is not necessarily congruent with the education system, which is kind of very much in silos. So I think this is one of the issues which is maybe behind some of these answers, that you need this people skill, which is kind of looking beyond these silos of, is it only an energy thing? Is it a technical thing? Is it a chemistry thing? We also see that the borders between energy and chemicals really flows. I mean, ammonia is a base chemical. It's also now a ship fuel and carrier, and so on. So there's multiple of those, and I think this is something which is hidden, but pretty sure that is behind it because we see the same. The other way around, if you find these skills, it's a real chance for innovation because there all of a sudden insights come when people talk together. We had insightful discussions when all of a sudden some refinery people talk with some energy people, talk with some chemists. And so all of a sudden we recognize, wow, there are super solutions which we have here. So there's a big chance in that as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, maybe the first.
Thank you very much. Coming from a university in Colombia, which is also a developing country, I can see that as a chicken and an egg issue. So perhaps like the skills are not there because there are not like enough job offers to that type of skills. So just an anecdote, I just got a feedback from my university that the students want to get more into oil and gas. So because there is where the opportunities for jobs are for mechanical engineers. So that's something to keep in mind. Like we don't know if we need to advance the industry. So it's attractive to young people to actually go into renewables energy industries, or we just again locked in business that already like allow those people to actually perform our work and develop professionally.
Thank you. Please.
I think, or I'll give you an example. I have been in the wind industry for a long time, and when I tell somebody, oh, yeah, that's a wind turbine, it has a 120-meter rotor, people will see and look at say, yeah, good, thank you, nice. So it's not. I was feeling the disconnect. People are not acknowledging. So one of the projects, I brought a wind turbine parked outside in the parking lot, 58 meter, and people were stunned to see the magnitude of just one blade. And like people were taking pictures, signing it. Somebody even tried to hang to it. The point is that they were totally, the perspective changed. And this was for the wind. So, and secondly, I tell when somebody is asking about wind, it's very complicated. No, it's not complicated. It's just a car. You keep the oil change or greasing and simple, and filters change, or air filters, whatever. There's nothing much under it. Just keeps running and running and running as long as just the basic, simple things. So somehow we need to that needs to be addressed. But it's very simple. Simply, I did my own solar project home. I was surprised. They're plug and play cables. I just connected. You cannot even mess it up, negative, positive, because they're only plug it in one direction. So you just plug it, go plug it wherever you need to. Everything is so simple. Renewables is so simple. It's just people. So I guess we need to. But one thing was the blade was definitely a big winner. People saw it and they were stunned how big it is.
Thank you very much. We need clear perspectives and more knowledge sharing. Okay, I think we have one intervention.
I'm Aziza Sultana Mukti from Bangladesh. So my question is, Europe and then North America, their resources are completely different than any other developing countries like Bangladesh. But when I'm getting that skills, capacities, and then other enabling conditions, I don't know IRENA or any other platform will take the responsibility to enhance the skills of the politicians and especially the budget maker. I know that developing countries have the very limited resources, but who will take the responsibility to make them educate, or in a positive word, make them efficient to invest or utilize those budget on the decarbonization? Because those people shouldn't be behind far behind than Europe and America.
Thank you very much. We do have an important point on international collaboration, which will be the next topic. I think since you touched upon the topic, I would move to the next main area. Gayatri, may I? No. Yes, please.
I just want to add on the point about to answer the previous questions. At least some of the major challenges, it depends on what your perspective is. If you talk about the corporate sector, the traditional players of oil and gas have now shifted into renewable energy, so they have the big capitals to do so. And I think that's good for, like you said, something about jobs for the young people. When you take a look into, let's say, the European and the West, they have massive capital to kind of support the building of skills and development. So it's better to foster that. But when you look from the perspective, let's say, if you're a developing country or you have lack of skills or capital in order to build that, then you would need all these funding. So there are major challenges depending on your perspective, either corporate player or government or. Yeah, that's all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. On the last topic of international collaboration. So we did ask how important the international collaboration is. I'll come to you just a moment. How important is international collaboration? And we see that is highly important. So we asked the experts to rate, and they were like, the scale of 1 to 10, most of them, almost 90% chose 10 on 10. So international collaboration is key across all those dimensions that we have discussed. And here we did take some of the key responses from the survey, like it is important to facilitate the international trade by aligning regulations and production processes, to share best practices and lessons learned, of course, not just within the developed market, but also to developing countries, build a circular bioeconomy, creating strategic alliances, consortiums, and so on, and also to establish and harmonize the standards. Here, I'll come back to you. I think the main point or views that we would like to hear from your side is how IRENA and other intergovernmental organizations or international organizations can help in fostering the international collaboration to remove some of these barriers and to also bring the key recommendations to wider stakeholders. Maybe we can start from you, Alexandra. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I actually had a point from a very global North European perspective on actually job attractiveness. So not skills capacity, administrative capacity, or the international cooperation aspect. So very small point on how regulation can play a role in enhancing job attractivity of clean tech sectors. So we can see it, for instance, in European legislation that's being developed now. It's specifically on clean tech manufacturing, not deployment. But there is basically conditionality applied to ensure that the sector supported provide attractive jobs and good jobs with good pay, with unionization, etc. So just wanted to make that point that regular governments and supranational bodies can also play that role to enhance job attractiveness in the new clean sectors. So very happy for other people that are not from Europe to also take this point.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'd like to open the floor on the importance of international collaboration and also how IRENA can help in fostering renewable solutions. Please.
Well, from an international organization perspective, I think it is really important for other international organizations to first identify that all countries have different development paths, different development stages. So that's the first thing. Then I think we need to use our platforms. We need to harness our expertise and try to gather all countries together and promote dialogue between them. We need to establish a coordinated, we have to establish coordinated milestones, because in the end, if we assume that every country will have its own national target, then what we are promoting, it's in the end overlapping. We need to promote international trade. We need to promote international collaboration. And I think our platforms are the place to do them, not only to promote dialogue again, but also to create other areas of synergies and also avoid overlapping, which is actually one of the main challenge in industry decarbonization.
Thank you so much. Please.
Yeah, I just totally agree with you. I second all that you said, and I would go even further. It's crucial, actually. And also, you pointed something very, very important. Yeah, countries do have different ways, but we mustn't forget that the goal is the same. And this is the first common denominator, and we have to acknowledge that, because if we say, no, I'm working only on this, I don't work on that, it's the end. There is no more collaboration. So this is very important, and the coordination also is very important. I was saving this rather for the next session, but for the hydrogen sector, International Partnership for Hydrogen and Fuel Cells in Economy does exactly that, and today it's related to the point on definitions and certifications. There's also the standards, but this is a very, very good example of collaboration. And also I second what the previous person said from Bangladesh and the other countries. Everybody must be on board somehow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please.
Thank you. I do agree with hydrogen being kind of like an example of collaboration between different countries, but I want to put some contrast on it, because some countries, we also have bioenergy resources to actually get hydrogen. And we see perhaps regulatory barriers, for example, in Europe for those type of sources. So the openness to look into the different technologies that may also help with this hydrogen economy could be something to take home, to think about, to see if it is like a really fair and just energy transition, the one that we are aiming for. But I also wanted to emphasize the fact that I would like to see more of a third world or developing countries flavor in these type of forums. So that should be something to consider also when we talk about diversity in the next few rounds of these events. But I really do appreciate like that, at least that I'm being able to bring that point. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please.
I think item number 2 is, I'll go with number 2, shared best practices and where the arena can come in, because it's been very, very well, I've learned a lot in the last few days, people sharing their experiences. But coming from the US, for me, Denmark or Belgium or EU, all presenting different experiences. And for me, like, I thought they were all within EU. So point is that without offending anyone, they're doing excellent things. But if IRENA takes a lead and puts everything without offending anyone, put it in a best practices. They had some for this issue, they did this for this. And also we heard a lot from the US. Californians are the most aggressive environmental renewable loving people, but they had the worst situation. So you want to be careful, like don't push it to that much level that issues faced by California start affecting here, because you have a lot of water in Europe, you have water, California has no water. Now we are talking about putting hydrogen, but for me, hydrogen means water. Unless we go into offshore seawater or whatever offshore you were mentioning this morning. The point is that, so it's without mentioning anyone, just if IRENA can take a lead, and I think I'm trying to convince people in IRENA to put best practices without offending anyone, and let everyone take a guidance from it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please.
Thank you. Juan Pablo Davila from UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization. And from our side as a UN organization, I think we cannot advocate more on the partnership and international collaboration. I think this is an essential part. It needs to be carefully looked at, especially to avoid duplication. Sometimes we work in developing countries and we see many agencies doing very similar things. So there's a lot of room to improve the coordination and avoid the duplication. A key aspect is to have different programs tailored to the level of development of those countries, starting with building awareness, letting them access to this type of forums. Just by being here, how many are coming from developing countries? Maybe it's how many are from connecting online. I think that's very important. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, please.
Yeah, Florian Ausfelder again from Decima. I think one of the things which is the most important one is here, establish and harmonize definition and standards. Because otherwise what we will see is that each region or country develops their own standards and they become effective barriers for trade, which is not what we want, because we want to be able to roll out these technologies. So this is a work, of course, which is done by the international standards organizations or by the WTO. They need to be engaged, and we need to take these standards out of the competitive range, so that each and every player on the market knows these are the rules. If I follow them, I have a level playing field, I can act on that. But if we don't have an international agreement there, we essentially produce new barriers of trade, and we don't get the technologies out in time.
Thank you very much. On this aspect, there is another interesting topic just after this workshop on the quality infrastructure for green hydrogen, where we'll touch upon some of these aspects. Any other intervention? Yes, please.
I just have to mention one point about the technology ownership of the technology transfer, because most of the European countries have collaboration with the South African countries, and South African countries, like they don't, European countries don't transfer the ownership of the technology. So this is very important because because of this, like exploitation of the local people can happen, and they don't get benefits from the actual of this green transition. So technology ownership of the technology transfer is very important in terms of international collaboration.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor again. Building upon the intervention by UNIDO will be very interesting. Beyond the economic analysis of this, of the integration of system and sector coupling, the climate analysis, because we have several options, especially with energy carriers. But one concern in terms of climate effects is the round trip efficiencies. So we have generation that could have several uses, and not all uses have the same mitigation potential. And including this in the analysis could inform very well the policy in terms of the actual end uses where each option fits better. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I think we are good and on time, and we had very interesting discussion and insights. I think we will take it forward. And now I invite Francisco to give the closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Gayatri, and I think I will do it from here this time. We have a new sound system, and I think the problem is that it's too good. Maybe you felt the loudness, no? So I hope this is better. But thank you so much for your input. I want to say a few things. So first of all, this is a project that will last for 2 years. So this will be delivered to the Commission in basically by the end of 2024. So this is a very good starting point for us. I feel, let's say, reassured that the elements that we had in the survey seems to be quite comprehensive. We have now new input from you today, but it seems to be that we kind of capture most of that already in what we had. Also, there is much more that we didn't present today from that survey. We have results per sector, which are quite different per every sector. So the need for every sector seems to be different. But coming to the summary of today, I think that something that are clear is that, first of all, these hard-to-abate sectors have a big difference to, for example, when we decarbonize the electricity sector, which is a local market that can be locally regulated, or the road transport, where you can have local blending mandates for one country. We are talking now about international commodities that are traded. And when we all claim for mandates for blending, this is, I think, the worst word you can use if you go to an ICAO or IMO meeting. Global blending mandates. I think that no one wants to touch that. No? And despite I agree that we need global market because global targets, because we have to decarbonize all at the same time. At the end, we celebrate every time there is a bit of progress in IMO, in ICAO, and others, and there is a good reason for that, because they are sending the right signals to each sector. Just to take the shipping sector. 5 years ago, we wanted to organize an event to decarbonize the shipping sector in the assembly. We didn't get traction at that time because they said, look, this thing about synthetic fuels for shipping is science fiction. Who is going to pay? We use the cheapest one, basically the last one. You think, how we are going to change that? Last year, we had a ministerial roundtable on shipping because they came to us because they want to organize an event with us. What has changed? First of all, they realized that the energy transition is really happening. What is what they transport the most? Oil and oil derivatives. And they see that this will peak and will reduce it. What are we going to ship now? Say, okay, possibly synthetic fuels. And by the way, now that we transport them, why don't we use it in our ships? So we have a new business. So let's talk about it, yeah? And that's how it started. So we cannot, let's say, underestimate that. Sectoral agreements is a great idea, but I wish you all of us good luck with that. I have been hearing about sectoral agreements since my previous life in UNFCCC, and it's extremely complicated. But international collaboration and some sectoral agreement, we see some hope. Again, if we take the shipping sector or the aviation sector, if we just get some agreement on the 10 biggest bunker ports in the world, we are addressing like 80% of the sector. If we just take Singapore, Los Angeles, Hong Kong, Rotterdam, yeah, even 5, we will be addressing like 40% of the sector. Yeah? If we take only the 5 biggest shipping companies, Maersk, MSC, etc., we're addressing 0.5%, and this is going in that direction. So that is the entry point to later change the whole. In the chemical sector, you mentioned voluntary markets. It's happening. We discussed yesterday or the day before, no? George from BASF was saying, look, there is demand for that. What we need is who is going to pay for the first of its kind, yeah? But that is where these premium prices are starting, and there is hope for that. Flexibility, I fully agree. No, flexibility is possible everywhere, but at different cost. So yeah, we can have flexibility from a cracker, we can have flexibility from a semi kiln, but at what price? So what we need is a holistic flexibility option. We can have services and we can have products for flexibility for everything we want, but at different prices and maybe long-term duration storage. So we will go in this marginal curve, okay, we will cope the flexibility. Maybe at a certain point we will reach that point where we will be able to pay a cement kiln or a cracker to really provide flexibility because it's the last resource. But we have to be a little bit more holistic on that. Infrastructure and technology, everyone is concerned. I'm particularly not concerned. I'm sure it will happen. There will be enough renewable electricity. There will be enough grids. Maybe not in the country that I want and where I want the industry, but looking at the global picture, there will be. And plenty. So for me, I don't see that as a big bottleneck from the discussion we have today. But just what I wanted to say is thank you so much, everyone, for the input you have provided. And the invitation is that, as I said, this project is just starting. It's an exercise of still 1.5 years more. And we want to keep you in the loop, sending you the updates of this project, getting input from you in the different stages, because that's the only way as we can also support not only what some people call the global north, but also the global south that we have discussed. Because at the end of the day, this concept of technology transfer is just trade of technology. At the end of the day, is the recipient is just taking technology that is already proven and innovating in their own markets, etc. And what is, I think I like very much the point from you, that what we need is to understand these topics and share the best practices. And this is the role of IRENA and our partners. I'm very happy that UNIDO is here, a key partner of IRENA, to move our OECD as well, to move this forward. But thank you so much. Appreciate all your input.